8 of the Tap HR podcast and also one of a series in our YouTube videos. A lot's happened since we last spoke. We hit 150 podcast downloads, which is awesome. We've hit over 5,000 views on our TikTok channel as well. So if you're not already, make sure you subscribe to all of our channels. So we have TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, everything that you can imagine. But I tend to put different things on different channels, so make sure you keep an eye on all of those. So this podcast and YouTube video is just a quick one around the upcoming changes to the right to work checks that we do in the UK. So at the moment, this change is due to come in as of the 1st of October, and it's just a key one to make everybody aware of, really, so that you know where you are and you know what you're doing. So taking us back a few steps, what happened in COVID was because people weren't able to do in-person right to work checks, the government made a very kind of temporary change to the way that we do them. So when people were taking a digital right to work check, during COVID, you could simply just hold up a copy of your passport and the person who was interviewing you could take that as verification of your right to work in the UK. As of the 1st of October, that right to work check, that digital way we do right to work checks is changing, and the government are taking away that temporary change that they made to the checks. So as of the 1st of October, for British and Irish citizens only, we're no longer going to be able to do what I just described, so take a check via a Zoom call or in a virtual kind of digital way. If you want to make sure that you still have a statutory excuse, and that means that if something goes wrong in terms of your check, you'll have something to fall back on in terms of making sure you don't have any civil liability. What you're going to need to do if you're doing a digital check is to use something called an identity check provider service, which will be government sanctioned, and there's various ones of them out there that you can utilise. You can still do checks in the normal way. So if you have people come along and you want to physically take their ID checks, that's great. If you're a kind of business that can still do that, fabulous, keep doing it. But a lot of companies are now working in a hybrid way. A lot of companies have embraced people working kind of up and down the UK, and being able to take in-person checks just isn't a thing for them anymore. So for those companies that are working in a hybrid way and can't do checks, as I was saying, there are going to be lots of options in terms of government sanctioned ID check providers. So if you are one of those companies, you need to make sure that you get yourself signed up with one of those providers. And there's various ones out there. There's, I would say probably 10 or 15 at the moment that are government sanctioned. I can't provide you with any recommendations in terms of which ones are the best ones to go for, because I haven't started using them as yet. But what I will do is I'll post a blog on our website and also on our YouTube channel, so you can see the providers and links to be able to get to them too. So the different providers work in different ways. You might have a candidate apply for a job and they may well need to just go through an online service, or that you might choose a provider that would allow you to do checks via your phone, so people can just upload pictures of themselves and also pictures of their ID, which will then be checked via the relevant analysts that work for the company. So you can still do checks in the normal way. You can still do them face to face if you want to, but for the majority of people or companies who have kind of moved away from that, it's probably not going to be a thing. So as I said right on the outset, this change is only applicable to people who are British and Irish citizens. If you've got other kind of foreign nationals that you're looking to employ, obviously those right to work checks still stay the same. So you still have to use the online and government service check provider to check the right to work for those individuals. What can go wrong? So if you don't take right to work checks in the right way and you end up employing somebody who is not able to work and illegally working in the UK, then you as an employer can be liable for a fine. So that could be £20,000 per employee, and in worst case scenarios you could also be liable for jail time. So it's really important that you do your right to work checks correctly, and also just make it easier for yourself and make sure that you use one of the government IDSP providers, because that way you have got yourself a statutory excuse, and that way you also know that you're doing everything in the best possible way and you're doing everything the right way. There will obviously be a charge for using these providers, and the charges vary. So some of the providers will only do quite large bulk checks, so kind of 600, 700 plus per year. Other providers will do kind of a small amount of checks. So you'll need to just do your research and make sure that you pick the provider that has the right service level that you need, the right kind of user experience for the candidate, and also that's the right price for you. And equally, if you do have a HR system that you use, some of the providers do also integrate with your existing HR system. So do check and make sure that if you're taking on a provider, see whether or not they can integrate with your HR system, because that way it'll just make things a little bit kind of cleaner and easier for your candidates when they're applying for your roles. So that's pretty much it. So to summarise, there are changes coming in as of the 1st of October to the way that you take digital ID checks for people who are British and Irish citizens. The main change is that you can't take stuff over the a Zoom call anymore. You really need to use an identity check provider. I'll put a link in the bottom of this video so that you can see a bit more in terms of a blog and information on that. If you're unsure or you're stuck, feel free to get in touch with myself at Tap HR. I'm more than happy to offer some free advice on this one. There's advice available on the internet. Doesn't feel right to charge people for it, so I'll be more than happy to kind of chat through things and help anybody out. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. As always, with any of my podcasts or my videos, the advice that I'm giving is for guidance only. Do make sure that you seek out your own legal advice if you're going to be making changes that link to employment law. You can see all of our podcast terms via our website. Thanks for watching, and thanks.